Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. And if you'd like to look at what I do for a living, because I don't do the podcast for a living, I do it for love and for fun, you could go to beingspace.world to find out everything I'm doing, or you can go straight to freedomofspirit.world to find out all about freedom of spirit. So today I'm going to talk about what is technically called critical reflection. I learned about this when I did the Masters in Humanistic Psychology, and we were taught that critical reflection is a key component of learning. So immediately the word critical caught me. I thought, critical, that sounds critical. That sounds negative. But actually what was meant was critical as in discerning, as in probing, penetrating, that kind of thing. So what is critical reflection? Why does it matter? Critical reflection is another layer down from just basic reflection. So reflection is when you consider an experience, you think about an experience that you've had or that you are currently having. So when you're listening to this podcast, you're having an experience, you're hearing, you may be watching me, you might be driving. So you're experiencing driving, you're experiencing listening and hearing, you're experiencing sitting in the seat, in the car, hands on the steering wheel. You may be experiencing other people in the car with you, possibly you may be eating something. So there's all sorts of things that you're actually experiencing in that moment. Reflection is when you reflect on the experience. So you consider the experience that you're having. So you might observe that as you're driving along, if you're eating something at the same time as driving and at the same time as listening, you might find that creates a bit of a logjam of experience in your body. Too many things happening all at once. You might experience that. You might not. You might experience it as a beautiful combination of experiences. Or when you're listening to a podcast or watching a podcast, you might reflect on your experience of that. You might notice yourself having thoughts about what you're hearing and seeing. That's reflection. And reflection is something that some of us never do. Some of us do very naturally. Critical reflection is another layer upon that. So critical reflection is when we reflect upon our reflection. So it's one step removed. So again, in relation to watching or listening to a show like this, you might notice you're having thoughts about what you're seeing and hearing. That's your first level of reflection. Then your critical reflection, the second level, is when you start thinking about how you're reflecting. So you're thinking about your own inner process of reflection, and you're critiquing it, you're questioning it, you're possibly challenging it. You're seeking to go deeper in terms of understanding it. So critical reflection is where we discover our assumptions, we discover our unquestioned beliefs. We go deeper than usual when we engage in critical reflection. So oftentimes we find that critical reflection, and perhaps even reflection itself, is difficult to do in the moment. Sometimes we do it later on. But a lot of people have reported to me that the more they practice both of these, the more they find they can actually do it in the moment. I remember talking to a client once who was talking about running board meetings and talking about how the board meetings went. And then he invited me to come in and observe some of the meetings and share with him about my observations and so on. And the first observations I gave him were to do with the energy in the room, the atmosphere, and the, if you like, undercurrents in the room, and the kind of cultural, emotional, social, interpersonal currents in the room. And as I discussed them with him, he realized that he recognized what I was talking about. He understood what I was talking about. He realized that he also noticed that, but he didn't consciously notice it in the moment in the boardroom. Afterwards, talking about it with me, when he was reflecting, he could go, "Oh, yes, I remember that. Yes, that does happen." But he couldn't do it in the moment. And I said to him, "One day, by the time we finish working together, you will be able to not only reflect on what's happening in the room, you will be able to critically reflect on your own reflection, spot your own assumptions, your own conditioning, your own uh, hidden beliefs, restricting beliefs. And not only that, you will be able to actually change the dynamics and the energy in the room without anyone noticing you're doing that. And it will be beneficial to everybody." And he looked at me and he was open enough. He actually believed me. There was no evidence to believe me because he'd never heard of any of those possibilities before then, let alone had the idea he might be able to do it. And lo and behold, he was able to do that by the time we finished working together. How did he do that? He did that by practicing in board meetings. He started in other people's board meetings when someone else was running the meeting and he was present. So he started then, when he had less pressure, observing his experience and observing his reflection in the meeting. He then practiced doing that when he was running the meeting, a little bit more difficult, but very satisfying. And that immediately helped him to be more astute, more sensitive in meetings and run them better. He then started practicing critical reflection in the meetings, going much deeper into his unconscious mind, thoughts and beliefs while he was actually in the meeting. Quite challenging a thing to do, very difficult to do, but he practiced it and then eventually he could do it. And he then practiced noticing the energies, which he'd started to do already through the reflection and the critical reflection. And then he started practicing changing his own energy as a result of having reflected and critically reflected and having created space by doing that. He could then change his own energy and change the energy in the room and transform these meetings forever. Now, that took him about 12 months to do, working rigorously at it, and it was absolutely possible for him to do it. But critical reflection was a key part of that process because without that, he wouldn't have been able to notice and dismantle some of his inner blocks and barriers that were impeding his ability to do all of what I've just said. He was able to free himself from conditioning that had been in place for decades through his own critical reflection. No therapy, no drugs. Critical reflection. So by exercising that muscle of his own, he was able to transform these meetings. And by the way, he also transformed his home life, which was pretty good to begin with, but he actually took it to another level, which was very exciting. His wife was delighted. So critical reflection, it's well worth exploring. It's well worth developing. What it does is it gives you far greater access to your inner treasures, your inner capacities, your inner talents, the power of the mind. Very liberating, very exciting. It is, I will warn you, it is hard work to begin to work with it, but it's well worth it. You can do it on your own. You can just listen to this show and you can just go away and just start practicing on your own. Or you can ask your coach, your therapist, your best friend, your partner to help you. You can band together with friends and make a club and decide to do it together. You can do it any way you like. So critical reflection. I'm delighted that somebody pointed this out to me. I had no idea what it was when I first heard about it. I'd probably done it a few times, but I've not been able to use it as a tool consciously. So I'm most grateful to John Heron and all the other incredible humanistic teachers who helped me to learn how to do that. So thank you for listening. Thanks for watching and have a discerning week. Have a wonderful week. And I will see you next time.